Beware of this cursed book. Which cursed book? Let's find out.
Shams al-Ma'arif, translated as the Son of Knowledge, is one of the most controversial books in Islamic history, often attributed to the 13th century scholar Ahmad ibn Ali al-Buni. This work has become central to discussions of magic, occult sciences, and mysticism within Islamic thought, though its reputation remains controversial.
A'udhu billah.
Considered both a source of deep spiritual knowledge and a book of dangerous occult practices, it occupies a unique place in the history of Islamic mystical literature. Although Ahmad al-Buni did write a book named Shams al-Ma'arif, it is not the same book as the one that is available today. Later generations added and edited the book. It is seen around the world as a cursed and dangerous book with knowledge on how to work with jinn among other practices that would be considered haram.
This reminds me of the story of two angels, Harut and Marut, that came to the people of Babylon and taught them magic. But they said, if you learn from us how to use magic and call upon the jinn, you will commit a grave sin, a very, very big sin. So they were like a part of the people that actually learned the magic from Harut and Marut, and some that did not want to become those disbelievers and evil people, and they didn't follow them. And this was actually a trial to the people of Babylon. And from what I've researched, is those were the people that first learned magic on our planet. Like this was the beginning of basically Sihr, magic, like black magic and all that, right? So yeah.
Haram. Ahmad al-Buni was a Sufi from North Africa, and most of what he learnt was taught orally from teacher to student. So what makes him unique is the fact that he did actually write these teachings down. These teachings were only supposed to be taught to those with proper understanding and knowledge and not the general public. Al-Buni stated that these writings are only meant for the elite Sufis who could grasp its meanings, as he said, "Shame unto anyone who has this book of mine in hand and reveals it to a stranger, divulging it to one who is not worthy of it."
Wow.
This book was only meant for his students and those with elite knowledge on how to understand the book. Written during the medieval Islamic period, the Shams al-Ma'arif belongs to a broader tradition of esoteric knowledge that includes astrology, numerology, talismanic magic, and spiritual invocations. These sciences were intertwined with Islamic cosmology and theology during that period. Al-Buni, its presumed author, was a scholar of the esoteric arts, Sufism, and Islamic jurisprudence. He spent much of his life in Egypt, where he was influenced by various mystical and occult traditions, which he synthesized into his writings.
You know what's like interesting about Egypt? This is not the first time I hear that there were like mystical and occult traditions in Egypt. They had like a lot of polytheism with like sun god, god of death, and cat gods and snake gods and this and that, and they were doing like sacrifices and stuff for them. And they used to do like a lot of black magic back in the day in Egypt, I've heard, right? Like, actually, Egypt has a very interesting culture, and I would love to actually travel one day to Egypt and learn more about also the history and all that, and maybe have a check at one of those pyramids and look at it, right? But yeah, there was like a lot of occult practices and magic back in the day in Egypt.
Where he was influenced by various mystical and occult traditions, which he synthesized into his writings.
Just look at the pharaoh.
In the Islamic world, particularly within the Sufi tradition, esoteric knowledge, or ilmul ghaib, has always held an ambiguous status. On one hand, Sufi mystics often used rituals and invocations to attain closer spiritual connections with God. On the other hand, the boundaries between lawful mystical practices and sorcery were, and still are, contested by Islamic orthodoxy.
Yeah, because it's haram.
Shams al-Ma'arif lies precisely at the intersection of these discourses, often straddling the line between respected spiritual practice and condemned magic. The book is divided into several chapters and treatises, each dealing with different aspects of occult sciences. The content includes
let me quickly explain for those of you that don't know it or are non-Muslim why actually magic is haram and forbidden in Islam. let me explain you guys this. So we Muslims believe that our only real helper and source of everything we get in this life is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything that we do needs Allah's permission. So if you're leaving the house to earn money, this needs Allah's permission. Even if you're taking a breath, this needs Allah's permission. So everything you do is by Allah allowing it and letting it happen, right? So if you're calling upon help from someone, right? For example, and it's like a dead person, let's say, and you're calling on your ancestor or something. This is shirk, same with magic, because you're asking somebody else than Allah for help or for getting information about, let's say, the unseen or something that your eyes can see, right? Like you have a jinn give you secret information or something. That means you're not calling to Allah for help or for guidance or something, but you're actually calling for, let's say, a jinn for guidance or some information or something. And this is shirk, because that means you are calling upon the help from someone else and not from Allah, right? In like a spiritual sense, right? So yeah, this is why magic is forbidden, because if you're asking for something, for a blessing or for help, you just do dua. You say, Ya Allah, help me, let's say, get this job, or help me become healthy, or this and that. You don't call on jinn or like ancestors or someone to heal you or something, because this is shirk. So this is why magic is forbidden in Islam.
Discussions of numerology, the science of numbers, astrology, the use of talismans and amulets, and the invocation of spiritual entities such as angels and jinn. It also delves into letter mysticism, the science of huruf, which involves the analysis of the Arabic alphabet's symbolic and spiritual significance. One of the core features of the book is the invocation of divine names known as Asma'ullah al-Husna, where certain combinations of God's names, when used properly, are believed to yield spiritual or material benefits. There are also numerous diagrams, symbols, and instructions for creating talismans, which are thought to protect the user from harm or bring about desired outcomes, such as wealth, health.
Exactly. You're asking Allah for such blessings, that's what I said earlier, or you make a dua for like protection, right? So this is the thing, you don't use like an object or statue or talisman. And it's almost like you ask like, oh, please my amulet or my statue, A'udhu Billah, grant me protection. So you're not asking from protection from Allah, but from an object. And this is shirk. Here we have a good example of shirk. So we have to be very careful with that.
Or bring about desired outcomes, such as wealth, health, or love. The spiritual practices detailed in Shams al-Ma'arif are deeply rooted in Islamic metaphysical ideas. In Islamic mysticism, the idea of achieving a higher state of consciousness, or direct knowledge of God, marifa, is a central aim. To that end, many of the invocations and rituals in the book can be seen as attempts to pierce the veil of material existence and access hidden spiritual realities. However, the line between spiritual practice and magic is often blurred in the text. Many of the book's instructions appear to blend religious ritual with what would typically be considered sorcery. For example, talismans created using specific configurations of Quranic verses, divine names, or celestial symbols are designed to exert influence over the physical world, leading to criticisms that the book encourages the practice of black magic, sihr.
Yeah, sihr.
In traditional Islamic law, sihr is condemned, and many Islamic scholars, particularly within the Orthodox Sunni tradition, have regarded Shams al-Ma'arif with suspicion and disdain. In 2021, one of Egypt's most famous businessmen, Hassan Rateb, was arrested for providing financial support to a gang who illegally traffic antiquities from Egypt.
Wow.
This gang found over 200 historical artifacts all across Egypt before being caught during an excavation. What was troubling, however, was how they found these treasures, which were extremely difficult to find.
With the help of jinn.
When the gang were arrested, they were found with an old book. When examined, the authorities identified it.
Oh, let me actually tell you guys something about like how they found it, right? That they called on the jinn for information, this and that. there's like some people in this world that are fortune tellers, and some of those fortune tellers, they are also calling upon jinn, and then jinn tell them actually information about some certain event or something that happens, because maybe some of the jinns heard the angels speak, or they can go from one place to another in a very fast amount of time and see, oh, this happened there, let me immediately bring the news or something, right? Or they can hear the gossip of people and then tell the one that calls upon the jinn. So sometimes there are like some fortune tellers that call upon the jinn, and the explanation is why they know, let's say, future events is because they heard like angels speak about this, for example, and then, oh, okay, let me tell this human about this or something, right? So this is why there are some fortune tellers that were actually giving some information about events, and it was accurate because the jinn actually heard this and then just passed it on. So yeah.
Be difficult to find. When the gang were arrested, they were found with an old book. When examined, the authorities identified it as the Shams al-Ma'arif. During the gang leader's testimony, he explained, when conducting these excavations, they used a complex method. They would use red mercury to establish contact with jinn, who would help them locate where the artifacts were buried. The gang admitted that they learnt this technique from the Shams al-Ma'arif. They were then sent to prison.
Of course.
Shams al-Ma'arif continues to generate debate in modern times. Many contemporary Islamic scholars criticize the book, seeing it as promoting illegitimate occult practices that violate Islamic law.
I don't even want to read it.
They argue that al-Buni's work encourages superstition and an over-reliance on supernatural forces, detracting from proper faith in God and adherence to Islamic principles.
Yeah.
It is important to note that the original Shams al-Ma'arif written by Ahmad al-Buni was significantly different to the one that is in circulation today. The original version was more focused on Sufi mysticism rather than the occult practices in the book in the modern version. This new version was compiled in the 17th century, including the works of other people centuries after al-Buni. However, he is still labeled as the author, even though maybe just a portion of the book is his works.
Wow.
This has now tarnished his image to many people, as the book is considered to be a cursed book by the majority. Shams al-Ma'arif remains one of the most enigmatic and influential texts in the history of Islamic esotericism, particularly in Sufi circles. Its mixture of mysticism, magic, and occult practices places it at the heart of a complex and often controversial tradition. Whether regarded as a source of profound spiritual wisdom or dangerous occult knowledge, it continues to capture the imagination of both scholars and practitioners. The book's legacy as both a mystical and magical text ensures its continued relevance, particularly in discussions about the boundaries of spirituality and magic within Islamic thought. The book should be avoided at all costs by most people. It contains names of jinn that could be summoned when mentioning them.
Yeah, this can kill your iman. Like, be careful with that, right? Because the danger is also, if people do magic, they no longer rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're calling upon another source for help. And this actually also breaks your connection with your creator, because in the past you were praying to Allah for help and guidance, and now you're going to other sources for that, so you become very, very distant with Allah, and it can totally erase your iman.
The book should be
very
avoided
careful.
at
May Allah
all
protect
costs
us from
by most
this.
people. It contains names of jinn that could be summoned when mentioning them. It should only be studied by Muslims with an elite level of Islamic education when learning on how to deal with jinns, black magic and talismanic practices, and not by those looking to work with jinn for worldly desires. The consequences for those will be severe.
Yeah, I mean, if someone, let's say, wants to do ruqya, right? And perhaps they can use somehow this book to get more insight, right, on such matters. And then their ruqya becomes more efficient, or maybe they can identify black magic somewhere and work against this or something, right? So kind of like as a protection, right? Like, it's like you study about your enemy or someone that's like able to bring harm to you or your family, or someone maybe did like black magic on a woman that suddenly wants to marry a guy she didn't want to marry before, and even though she said she doesn't like this guy, and this guy maybe used black magic to actually win over the girl. I actually heard stories in some countries where there are people using such practice of magic to make a potential spouse actually want them and stuff, even though maybe they're not attracted to that person and such. And what's actually very disturbing about those kind of practices, and this is why I want everyone from ever doing this to get married. So there are two problems with this if you use black magic to marry someone. First of all, you won't get Allah's blessing, and your marriage will be terrible in the future, okay? And second, I've heard that black magic for love is only temporarily. That means if someone does something like that to make someone become infatuated with someone, right? So they get married, even though this person may be not attractive or you don't get along well, it lasts only for a short period of time, maybe some months, a few years, and then it's over. The spell is basically broken, and then they will separate, and both are miserable. So don't do this to get married with someone. Do istikhara and look for someone that you like and that likes you, and don't do it this way with black magic. Same when it comes to finding a job or career. Don't do black magic to find this, because you also get something that doesn't have Allah's blessing and can lead you to a lot of haram and curses and this and that, right? So be very, very careful if you want anything accomplished in this dunya, from finding work, from finding a potential spouse, to refrain, stay away from black magic, because it will maybe help you temporarily, but will have some very negative after effect. The second taste will be very, very bad of it, right? So be very, very careful with that. Don't do this. Stay away from that, and do it the right way, and always call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, protection, and guidance. And don't call upon statues, amulets, talismans, or your ancestors, or some jinn for help, because they are all powerless in front of Allah. Allah is the one with infinite power, okay? If Allah wants something to happen, it will happen, okay? So if you're making a dua and you're asking Allah for something, and if Allah accepts this and says, you know what, this is actually good for you, then you get it. If you don't get it, it was not good for you anyway, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears our duas. So if we are making a dua and we are not getting something, even though we made dua for it, then there was something bad or negative in it, perhaps, and Allah didn't want to give this to you because it will harm you, not benefit you. It could be you did maybe dua for a potential spouse or for a job, but there was something bad in it, and only Allah knows the hidden, right? So yeah, this was interesting. I will be very, very careful with such books. And yeah, if you guys are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And I will see you guys next time, inshallah.